Creatives, community, kind folks out there, hello. It's Thursday, and we are going to deep dive into, well, generally speaking, characters from Game of Thrones. All right, so our mission was because of both Game of Thrones, a very popular intellectual property, and Marvel superheroes. We've been taking characters from each one, but Dead Man the Storyteller, I'll get to you just in a moment. Dead Man the Storyteller kind of gave a little bit of a challenge. I see you out there, dude. What's going on in the chat? About our mission is to pick different characters, some popular, some not very popular, but it doesn't really matter whether you even know who the characters are or they are even any of your favorite. What we're doing is we're taking these characters in our popular fiction in Game of Thrones and Marvel Cinematic Universe, and finding out what we can steal to add to our tabletop RPG games. Well, Dead Man the Storyteller put in Ghost. For those who don't know, Ghost, amongst others, we're going to go through their names and who they are Direwolves that first appeared as pups in the very first episode of Game of Thrones. So it's like, first I was like, I'm a little annoyed with you, Dead Man. And then I was like, no, I'm not. This is a cool idea. So I'm being facetious. So we're going to deep dive into how could we use dire wolves, and we're going to go well past the just have a pack of wolves and a stat block. We're going to go well past that. We're even going to go past the animal companion thing. We're going to go into it. So Dead Man, you say in the chat, only 2 of the Stark direwolves still live. Nymeria, now a pack alpha living in the wild, probably not far from Winterfell, which I guess, and Ghost currently chilling in Winterfell. The books delve far more into the relationship with the direwolves and the Starks, going so far as to having all of the Stark children, or most of the Stark children, have the ability to warg into the wolves, which is essentially possessing or riding or astral projecting or psychically transferring their consciousness into the wolves to various degrees. In the television show, we don't see that at all. It's just more of there is an empathic and connection, more of a destiny connection, which we're going to get into. So, all right, for those who don't know, in the first episode of Game of Thrones, we have this family, and the family known as the Starks. They live in Winterfell, the far north. And the Stark sigil is the wolf. It is the head of the direwolf. And there is this long-standing relationship of that family name and that bloodline. Yeah. And of course, Dead Man is the only one who warged in the show. Well, no, that's actually not true. There was a wildling who was able to do the same thing into a bird or a hawk or falcon or some kind of hunting bird or something like that, and maybe appeared twice, maybe in the television show. That's about it. So yeah, Bran, of course, we know Bran's the master of it, right? Right. He's King Warg. So in the first episode of the show, we find out he's the only one of the Starks that was able to do so in the television show. So, and this may or may not be important as far as how we're going to develop what story or what kind of traits we're going to pull out of this. But before they even met or as they were meeting these pups, there's this expression of how the Starks and the people in Winterfell, and especially the Starks and that wolf sigil, they, not just their relationship with wolves, but it's almost as if the family line honors wolves in terms of how they act. They're the idea of a pack of wolves and their loyalty to each other and their ability to survive in the wild, and it's just them, and how they're able to range over a long territory almost as if the family sigil and the Stark name is almost wolf-like in their approach to life. And so you could make the case that, which comes first, the Starks or the wolves, right? In terms of history and behavior and things like that. But to add to that story, they found out that the mother of the wolf was killed by a stag, with sharp horns and such, and the small pups were left there, and the choice was to kill the direwolves because honestly, in this particular setting, direwolves are wild. Like, you cannot train them. This isn't the idea of, hey, I'm just going to take these puppies home and, and kill them. Rickard says, yeah, oh yeah, hell yeah. So the question was, do you kill them and save them, the pain of having to raise them, of them surviving in the wild, because they wouldn't, and it would be painful for them, or adopt them? And that's a very dangerous thing to do. But all the Stark children were there, and as many Stark children as were there were that many wolves, direwolf pups. And so each of the children, there was a little conversation. Ned Stark loves his kids, so they adopted these direwolves and raised them on the off chance that if any one of them got out of hand, got wild, because they are wild animals, that they would all be put down. And so this connection, this legacy, almost like a combination of all of that, destiny, preordained, a portent, seems to be connected. So Rickard says symbology of that direwolf seems to have been missed by the greater audience. And I absolutely agree with you that some of the sigils in Game of Thrones relate far more to the people that are under it than we think, as far as the lion and the stag and the wolf, and how they relate, how the public relates to them and their own behavior, which they may not even realize relates to these direwolves. Because one of the comments is that in the show is that a Stark must always remain in the North, and the Starks are stronger together. Once the Starks split up, they became weak, and each one of them getting picked off one by one. Not literally, but their ability to survive outside of the pack was extremely limited, and in many ways they had to learn hard lessons before they joined together. Now, when they're together, it's like they're greater together. They're greater than their parts, right? So towards this end of the show, when Jon Snow is with Sansa, with Arya, like when they're together, they're smarter, they're stronger, they think better, they have a greater sense of purpose. Even the other families in Winterfell up north seem to be stronger for it, and they are far more loyal to the Stark name, as if the Starks themselves are the alphas of the entire northern region, which I believe they even mentioned in the game that the entire North is as big as the other 6 kingdoms down south, or maybe 5 kingdoms, or what have you. Rickard says, I mean, it basically stated that the wolf will be brought down by the stag, and the Baratheon, the stag, comes to the Starks, the wolf, and look how that meeting ended for the Starks. Absolutely, it was there. There's a lot of foreshadowing, in not just in the show, very much in the books, but in the television show, absolutely was brought down, right? And when normally we think of, if you think of it, the wolf bringing down the stag is a no-brainer, right? There is no fear of a wolf and a stag and who's going to win, right? That's a 99.9% wolf wins, stag dies. So the wolf always seems to have the upper hand. But once Ned Stark sees this, in his head, he's not a he's not a superstitious gentleman. Starks don't tend to be don't tend to have their head in the sky. So when they see this, including all of the other pups for all the other kids, he's not putting two and two together in this world of pragmatic thought. He's not thinking, the Baratheons have a stag as their banner emblem. They're going to take us Starks down. Never crossed their minds at all. That's just not them. I'm sure, given the chance, someone would have seen that, but in a strange way, it's like no one looks at omens and portents in the bad way when it concerns themselves. They look at the good part, like, oh, there's just as many. There's 6 pups. There's 6 of us. They should be our puppies because that's a good omen. Yay! No one goes, oh yeah, by the way, the mom got killed by a stag. Maybe one of us is going to die. No one thinks that way. So now, if you take a look on just yeah, no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. Yeah. I miss some Monty Python. So the 6 direwolves range in color from Ghost, who's like pure white, to Shaggy Dog, who's pure black. And if you just Google image direwolves Game of Thrones or direwolves the Starks, you'll see some artwork out there, and it shows the gradation of their colors, which is kind of cool. I like that. I like the fact that they're each a different color, and it goes from pure white to solid black. And their names are Grey Wind, Nymeria, Shaggy Dog, Lady, Summer, and Ghost. Now, as far as the television show is concerned, it was very difficult for them in the beginning of the show to digitally render them, because they used real wolves, or maybe wolf blended, or Nordic dogs to represent, or ones that closely related, the closest relationship to a wolf they could get, and still have them trained. And they used them for the show. And then what they did was they used camera tricks to get the wolf to look bigger than it should, because they're probably, I'm going to say the smallest one was twice as big as a regular of a dog or a wolf of that size. I believe most of them stood at least chest level, if not larger, and so it was difficult for them to render that into a scene. It was far easier for them to, like, oh, we're going to show you a camera image of the characters talking, and then we're going to switch to a plain blank corner of the room, and then show these direwolves. Now, the other part in the television show is that these wolves they're not pets, right? They don't have collars. You don't see them playing with the kids. You don't see them playing fetch or riding on their backs or whatnot. But they do show up. What does happen in the television show, and I think we can pull this and make this a wider ranging thing for our tabletop games, is that they appear when needed, right? Maybe a little, sometimes it can be a little bit too Deus Ex Machina, a little bit too like, oh, there's no way for the hero or the main character to get out of this situation. Insert direwolf. Direwolf comes in and, i.e. saves the day, throws a monkey wrench into the whole thing, character gets out of it. Although, it was foreshadowed from the very first episode, and has been used as a tool in the show as well, to motivate various characters and to show their not only their honor and their goodness, but also some brutality and callousness. So yeah, I think we could use that and these direwolves, and the idea of having these direwolves attached to these characters as a very as a motivating tool for a story, a linchpin, if you will. So not to delve too deeply into the darker parts, so let's get some of the darker parts out of the way as far as these direwolves are concerned. Quite a few times in a television show, these direwolves have died off one by one. Definitely not by their own choices. Cersei ends up I can't tell you how each one of them dies specifically, but I know Cersei, a number of them have been captured, killed. I believe Ramsay had one of them. Ramsay had one of them, had their head cut off. Cersei had one of them killed, and I believe Tywin even had one of them ordered to have one of them killed and their fur taken and whatnot. So don't quote me on that. I'm sure I could Google it right now, but I'm not going to go ahead and do that. So they have been killed. I mean, the show is brutal. They're hell. They're brutal to children and pregnant women and victims of all kinds. Good people die in the show, and these direwolves are no less subject to that. But as yeah. Yeah, Rickard says it's also important to note the world's difference between the direwolves and the hounds and dogs in the show. Yes, in the television show, it's not as if like today when we hear of direwolves, like in our minds, I think we're thinking of breeds of dogs that are like winter dogs, like maybe direwolves are similar to like timber wolves and a number of breeds of dogs that are like shaggy with blue eyes and they're cute and stuff like that. In this show, there's a big difference. Direwolves are when a person sees a direwolf, it is like panic time. Direwolves in this show are the equivalent of like us seeing like dinosaurs or dragons or like giants or something. Like direwolves are not anything you need to mess with. Now, of course, you get enough people, enough armor, and enough cojones surrounding a bunch of people surrounding a direwolf. Yeah, you can corral them into a cage and whatnot, but no one trusts direwolves. They're like wild and mysterious, and they have there's a scary intelligence behind their eyes, whereas the hounds and dogs in the show are clearly hounds. There is no blood relationship as far as the public is concerned between what a hound is in the television show and what a dog is. Rickard says that hounds and dogs are often showed as violent and rabid. The direwolves aren't shown to be inherently bloodthirsty or rabid, again, the irony, right? The hounds and dogs are seen as like violent and rabid and like bestial, but which ones do people distrust, right? Through rumor, through legend, right? None of the direwolves have ever come across as being brutal or violent or malicious or wild or out of control at all in the television show ever. I mean, sure, have they warned people away with a couple of growls here and there? Yeah. But when it comes to the hounds and dogs in the show, which are supposed to be trained and supposed to be well behaved and in essence man's best friend, most of them have been Ramsay Bolton's ass, starved, rabid, in cages, uncontrolled, and that kind of thing. Again, Schrodinger's stereotype, right? It's like it's both. They are both fearful, but nothing to be feared, and both to be feared and no one fears them, kind of thing. Which people are, but again, human beings, we're stupid, and George R.R. Martin put that into the story, so that's the case, right? But we know in, let's say, our classic Dungeons and Dragons, we've got animals and direwolves kind of come in two methods, right? They either are animal companions or they are creatures we encounter while we're traveling through the wild, right? It's a random encounter. It's an animal encounter. Most likely very low level, like first to third level or something. Giant rats, owlbears, a couple of other wild animals, cougars and panthers and tigers, maybe some couple of saber tooths or whatever. And we got ourselves some direwolves. Now, as encounters. Now, maybe you can even add some direwolves to some goblinoids, some bandits or something, uh, maybe some ogres or trolls or whatever living in the wild. So normally they are considered like an adversary, an enemy. If you want to add some twist to it, which I prefer, you can role play animals just like you can role play characters, right? Like, why are there dire wolves? Are they protecting their young? Are they hunting? Are you in their territory? Are they under the control of something bigger or better than them? The classic vampire who's controlling a pack of wolves. Astrally, maybe there's an old hag that feeds the dire wolves, something like that. So are there dire wolves starving? Are they diseased? Is one of them injured? Do they, excuse me, do they smell something on the PCs, like, the blood and gristle from the last 5 combats the PCs have? Do they smell that and are drawn to the blood and gore? So you can role play them that way. That's just a simple encounter. The other way is to have them as a animal companion. Your classic druid slash ranger. Maybe there's a feat or a class ability, or maybe it was a gift, and the character has the direwolf as an animal companion. Maybe even someone might even want to push it a little bit and give a wizard this type of animal companion. There's a number of, I believe there might even be a barbarian subclass as well that might have that as an animal companion. But again, and of course, if the direwolf doesn't exist as an animal companion, you can even reskin some of the other animals, like a bear or what are some other animals? A bear or a tiger or something like that. And just Dead Man, a Storyteller says the familiar. Yeah, the wizard's familiar could be an animal companion of sorts with the dire wolf and such. Maybe maybe the game master wants to give it as a gift or a boon. I believe there's even the magic item, the familiars of wondrous power, not familiars, the statues of wondrous power. It's not the right term. Anyway, figurines of wondrous power. I got it before you start typing, Dead Man. The figurines of wondrous power, there might be one in there, and if not, it's very easy to insert one. The figurines of wondrous power are animals that are figurines. You say the command word, toss them in the air, whatnot, and then they become some kind of animal, whether they're like goats, elephants. I believe there's a giant fly. There might be a lion or something like that. Ricker says, taking one step further, do they smell something about the characters, like an aura unique to the certain type of person, soul, or archetype? Yeah, that's where I'm heading, man. That's where I'm heading. So the Starks and the Direwolves. Now, George R.R. Martin has made it quite clear that, like Dead Man said, brings up like Drizzt's Panther, Drizzt Do'Urden, the Drow dual scimitar wielding character from the Forgotten Realms, had found a figurine of wondrous power that became a Black Panther. And what you're talking about, Rickard, is something that I think that George R.R. Martin has put into the Game of Thrones that makes so many people speculate, right? For example, does the Stark bloodline really have direwolf blood in it? Do they really have a connection, a biological connection to wolves? Right? The easy answer is I don't know, right? But do they have a mystical connection? Well, point blank, in the books they do, because they're able to warg into their direwolves. But even in a television show, there's a narrative, story related, portent, omen related, that somehow the Starks themselves have an intrinsic relationship to not just these direwolves, but to the idea of direwolves as a whole. And they become quite important in the show as far as saving their lives and motivating them as to what they should do and how they should do it. When an NPC, you're not sure whether the NPC is good or not, and then they take your direwolf and kill it and cut its head off, you pretty much know this person needs to die, right? Like it's it one of the things in Hollywood is you never kill the family dog, right? Um, and this corresponds to characters like Chewbacca and whatnot. But in television shows, yeah, you never kill the dog. That's been a Hollywood trait from way back. That probably goes back to the 40s or even earlier than that, right? To the dawn of the moving pictures. Never kill the dog. You could and in the movie John Wick, they did it, and guess what? Yeah, Rickard says they needs to die. John Wick Westeros style. Exactly. Yes, I know John Wick's puppy represented his love for his wife and then whatever. None of us care about that. All we know is bastard killed a puppy. Dude needs to die, and anybody in their way needs to, right? You know what I mean? Rickard says, always thought it was a literary device to make the Ranger's animal companion make sense. Didn't know it was an actual item. Well, no. The Dead Man brings up the name. I want to say it's been pronounced Guinevere, but Gwenwivar. Who knows how to pronounce that damn name? Anyway, Guinevere is the mispronounced name of the Black Panther that Drizzt has in the Forgotten Realms series. But in that series, he has a Black Panther that's a figurine. That's not a normal Ranger thing. That's not a, normally an animal companion is an animal that's a companion. And it doesn't disappear into a pocket-sized object. I mean, I'm sure there are game masters and players out there who would prefer to have it that way, because a lot of times certain animal companions can't travel with the player characters in certain regions or whatnot, and it would be cool to like, hey, that's my mounted horse. I want to put it in my pocket, which is why a lot of the rules are like, hey, if your animal companion dies, you can get it back after a short or long rest or something, which, then you start doing the eye roll, like, well, that doesn't really make sense. But then you're hamstringing the character if this is what they wanted to invest in and they can't take it with them. And then on the other hand, no one wants to see the family dog die in their role-playing game and then have it disappear for 7 levels. So what do? You have to come up with some kind of method to allow a player character to both have this thing external to them, make it a complication if they lose it, and then not take it away from them permanently, right? That's a balancing act that they had to do, and there is no easy answer to it. Rickard says, that's why I thought it was a literary device to get around all the wonky stuff with the companion, as Drizzt never got a companion, as far as I know. Exactly. Really, it was. I mean, you're telling a story. You want to have this character who's a loner, but you don't necessarily want to have the entire series have an internal monologue. So he's got to talk to someone. So he talks out loud to the Panther, but then you want to put him in situations where the Panther is going to make it too problematic to have a situation. So, i.e., Familiar goes into the pocket. He's able to talk to people, walk around, with a heavy cloak and whatnot, and then can bring the Panther out when story calls for it. So, yeah. Deadman says, if you get your animal companion back after a long rest, if it dies, it becomes more of an ammo type instead of a pet. Exactly. Yeah, I know. Because once you do that, like, don't they just become hit point sponges? And it's not really a companion anymore. It's like you said, it's more like ammo. Like, I'm going to expend this resource. Oh, it's dead. No big deal. I'll get it back after a long rest. It's like, yeah, like I said, there's no easy mechanical way to fix that, because if you wrapped everything around your companion and you want to play this as a character, and then it's at least half as powerful as you are, and it gets taken out in like the first round with an ogre, now what does the player character do, right? You just nerfed one of the player characters, and that's it. So there's no easy answer to it. There's no easy way to go about it. But we can tell stories with it. Okay, like for example, I think sometimes just because other character classes have this mechanical thing called a familiar or an animal companion, that we limit other character classes to not having the same thing. So, for example, people own pets all the time in the real world in all time periods. Why can't player characters and or NPCs have pets, right? We've seen plenty of times where goblinoids are riding on the back of wargs, giant, bestial dog-like things, and then they will themselves have rabid dogs that hunt the player characters down. That's a thing. And a lot of times we'll use that in an encounter. Oh, you find 6 hobgoblins and they've got 3 rabid dogs that are coming after you through the woods, and you have to fight them. And there's a raging river ahead of you. What do you do? Well, we're gonna, and there's a thick trees and stuff. Well, I'm going to climb in a tree. I'm going to go across the river to see if I can lose their scent. I'm going to hide in the brush and try to attack them from behind and whatnot. And maybe that's just me because I love using the environment, but whatever the case may be, we see that for our adversaries and our NPCs, but clerics can have pet dogs, right? Wizards have familiars, but they can also have pets. Fighters, I can imagine having trained dogs plenty of times. And I think sometimes because we know that there are player types or class types that have that as a special feature for them, that we don't want to step on their toes. But like Rickard says, I think it's a difference between a pet and a companion. Exactly. Again, we get into the John Wick thing, right? Your player character has a fighter or a cleric or a warlock or a rogue or something, and they have their favorite pet dog, or trained animal of any type, right? A falcon, a dog, what are some other animals? Hell, it could be even a bear or something like that. They have their favorite pet animal of any sort. They go into a battle. It survives for three levels and then gets killed. That can hurt people emotionally outside the game. Some people, you never know what kind of triggers people have, and that could be a problem, especially again if that player character has invested a lot of time and energy into training their pet, who mechanically in the game isn't a familiar or an animal companion again, right? So I believe people stay away from it because they may be afraid of the problematic part of it. I'm going into battle. My pet gets killed. I feel, I have this intrinsic relationship to pets in the real world. I don't want to see one killed in my role-playing games, so I don't want to add it in there. Right. Deadman says there's even classes that use multiple pets, a la Squirrel Girl. Yes, there are. There are, I believe. I'm sure you could do some searching, but there's many class features where not only do you get like a familiar or an animal companion, a la druid and ranger, and I believe even wizard, but you can even summon more animals to your side in addition to your familiar and or animal companion as well. Ricker says a companion is a fighting machine. A pet is a non-combat NPC. Now, here we go. We often don't think of pets. I'm sorry, let me take the word pet out of it. We often don't think of animals as NPCs, right? Let's take a very popular older movie, Dances with Wolves. Here's a guy who, a little bit on the crazy side at the time, goes out into the wild, and is kind of paralleled or followed by these pack of wolves, and this one wolf is kind of like, this guy's kind of crazy, and he is seen, a little bit crazy, dancing, with this wolf nearby, and the wolf kind of becomes a little bit of a companion, a parallel, this individual that kind of the wolf represents a storyline, a growth of the character, which in many ways parallels the same thing in Game of Thrones, we often don't think of an animal as an NPC. Just as a just as a rogue may have a connection into the city, or a what is the some background features include, like, hey, you know someone that will, or you know some people that will give you safety, or you know someone in this big city, or you know someone in a black market that can get you weapons or sneaky weapons or something. Why can't, or why don't we use animals? Why can't we? And I think we can. Um, it makes perfect sense for a ranger or a druid, or even any other character class that might have lived in the wilderness of any sort, like a hermit or something, and their connection, their NPC, is a wild animal. It could be a leopard, or a giant scorpion, or a spider, or like, why not? Why not include that in the game? Why not have the ranger that goes down in a fight and falls into the raging river, and then everyone, including the PCs and even the game masters, it's like, oh, I think your character's died, or whatever, and then later on is pulled out of the water by this wolf that has left their pack or something like that. And maybe there's this unspoken empathic bond that they have together, and of course the wolf runs off, maybe, or they talk a little bit, and then the ranger's by himself and he's hunting fish, and the wolf is like 200 feet away watching him, and the ranger leaves some fish for the wolf, and or the bear, or whatever animal you want, and leaves it there and walks away, and when he looks back at the tree line, he sees the wolf pad over and take some of the fish and whatnot, and maybe that happens, and then maybe hours later the wolf jumps on the back of the ogre's back when the ranger's trying to fight him or something like that. I mean, why not include animals into our repertoire of NPCs that the PCs have a relationship with? And it doesn't necessarily need to be a one-to-one relationship, right? So, for example, PCs go through wilderness. They know wilderness is dangerous. They hear in the distance the baying of wolves. The ranger smiles and goes, you know what? I think we're probably going to be pretty safe. Where everyone else is like, oh my God, we're going to get attacked by a pack of wolves. And the ranger's like, I've got it under pretty good. Trust me on this. I think we're going to be okay. I think our travel through the haunted wood is going to be just fine, right? Because maybe he recognizes that sound, and that wolf is just like, you know what? I know you're traveling through here. I'm gonna get my buddies to make sure that everything's going to be safe, right? And what a great gift to give to a player. Why not give a player, instead of a magic item, an animal, a pet? Maybe not on the level of the animal companion, although why not? But maybe there is something like that. And an animal companion could be an owl, or a hawk, or a falcon. Like I said, a giant spider, or a scorpion, a python, or a rattlesnake, or something like that. I mean, we can go even further into the arcane with things like manticores and harpy. Well, man, and maybe they're a little bit too monstrous, but owlbears go into that level. There are, my mind is reeling with so many of these other animals, but you get my meaning, right? That you could have, there's nothing stopping us, and especially if it's at your own table, there are no RPG police that are going to take that away from you. Pseudo dragons, yes, pseudo dragons. Oh man, there are. Oh, you could even go with like living plants. You can go with pseudo dragons. Go into the Fey styled creatures, whether they are. Man, my brain just froze on some of these because I'm thinking of so many of them. But again, you can reskin a ton of them too. There's a lot of giant insects are another one. And of course, whether you're talking wolves, especially the predators, the wolves, the lupines and the felines, you can easily reskin them, whether it's their color, their shape, their size. It's a blue tiger with white stripes. It's a wolf with solid red, blood red fur and eyes like ice, or something like that. Like, you could really go arcane with it, especially if you're like a wizard or like a druid or something, or you want to flavor your, you want to reskin your druid and not just be, I don't want to just be woodland, I want to be more like fae related or something. So maybe there's like a, maybe the druid has a bear that's an animal companion, but the animal companion's purple. You know what I mean? Deadman the Storyteller says there's a random table in the 3.5 DMG with alternate animal companions and familiars. I didn't know that. I'm not as familiar with 3.5, but yes, absolutely fine. Google food, you could probably find that table somewhere as well for like random animal companions. Now, again, the problem with pets, animal companions, and such is the fact that players especially want them to be, have a lot of utility without the, they want to emphasize the utility and mitigate the dangers that these things are in. It very much like Batman bringing Robin into the crime fighting world. It's like, it looks cool on paper, but in practice doesn't make sense, right? When Batman brings a 12-year-old into a gunfight, it doesn't make much sense when Robin gets a bullet through his, you know, thigh or something like that. Like, it's cute until it's not. And so the practicalities of bringing in an animal companion that's very vulnerable, especially if they're in an environment that is not conducive to their survival, yeah, you're going to get problems. It's like, oh, we have to swim across the raging river and my animal companion can't swim. What are we going to do? You know, we're going down deep into the dungeon and my animal companion can't fit. Or we're going into the city and my animal companion will probably be, you know, put in a cage or trapped or something the first minute I step into town, you know. And then it becomes its own issue, its own problem. And players don't like that at all. And so that's definitely a session zero kind of thing you really need to talk about. Now, mind you, I'm going to plug something here. I don't know what this is. Oh, it's a cinematic environment about plains and grasslands, right? You could run a game where the idea of having pets and animal companions and mounts even is the game itself, right? Yeah, Rickard says it feels like a cheap shot from the DM to go after the companions and pets. It emotionally, yes, it does feel like a cheap shot. The problem is if a player sends their like direwolf to bite the tail of the giant drake or lizard or worm or what have you, it makes sense that that thing is going to turn around and snap back, right? So, and oftentimes it is a cheap shot by the DM, especially if the players are super capable, to just take a pot shot at the animal companion or the pet or whatever. So again, you've got you got another issue, right? Hey, the dragon breathes fire. My character gets like +8 on their saves against, you know, against the fire breath, but my animal companion, not so much, right? It's, I mean, sure, is it possible? Yes, but then again, it's like, does Deadman brings up, is it just ammo, right? If the animal companion is as protected as the player character, and it becomes mainly a hit point sponge, is it more like a tool or a resource that you just expend, or does it become a storytelling thing? And so a lot of that really needs to be talked about above board, right? Neither player nor GM should surprise the other with what their intentions are. If you're a player and you're like, listen, I really want to have an animal companion, and then you need to lay down, okay, here's what I want to do with this animal companion. Here are the things that are really going to trigger me. Here's what I'm looking for. How can we come to an agreement, right? And is it metagaming, kind of? Yes. You know, depending on how you use it, is it like, you know, are we going to like not target animal companions in the beginning? Are you going to make that agreement? That's up to you and your table, right? Rickard says, oh yeah, in combat, sure. Out of combat, it still feels a bit dodgy as the player also doesn't have full control over the pet or companion. And again, you got to make that decision. Does the dungeon master or game master control the pet, or do you just put all the control over to the player character? Again, that's a choice. That's a choice you have to make. Is that, does the player make all the roles, and the game master's like, look, I got enough on my plate. Look, it's you. You have your direwolf. I think that's really cool. Mr. Halfling riding on the back of their hound or wolf or something, or war dog or whatnot. Sweet. You make all the die rolls. You make all the decisions. Or are you at a table where, hey, I've got a pet. Hey, game master, I'm going to ask my pet to do this thing. Game master's like, well, it's busy right now, or it's in heat, or it wants to, it's hungry, or something like that. Or make an animal, animal handling check to make it do what you want, since it's a pet and not necessarily an animal companion. It depends on what you want and how you want to get out of it. So I do have a couple of suggestions, though. Rickard says it's still an animal, so it's not as smart or knows as much and such. So RP gets murky, in my opinion. Again, yes, there are sometimes maybe a good thing is to have maybe an animal behavior table in an RPG supplement that might give you both the benefits and the drawbacks of having that particular animal behavior or background, considering that there might be a book out there that might even have a whole chapter devoted to mounts and pets. I don't know. There might be one out there. I'm not quite familiar. So anyway, I'm just being stupid. So one idea, of course, taking the Game of Thrones thing, is you could have animal companions fade to the background. And what I mean is that their introduction into the story might be extremely limited, right? You could, let me give you a very, very, an example where the animals are pulled back to the point of being a narrative element rather than being an actual animal that participates walking alongside the characters. Okay, maybe, for example, in your game, let's say you were playing the Starks, right? Your bloodline, not your bloodline, your banner is related to the wolves of the North or something of that nature. Maybe, just maybe, you use it as a storytelling element, right? Your character raised these dire wolves. They're wild. They go out to the wild. Your character goes out amongst their life and, out of sight, out of mind. Inspiration is given in the game. Hey, if you role play well, you get inspiration. Why not allow that player to spend their inspiration to have their dire wolf show up? If you're going to give them, if they can spend inspiration to get advantage anyway, you can spread inspiration even further. I know plenty of people who've just said inspiration can be spent to, it's like a Benny that you can spend to have something benefit the character that's outside of rolling a D20, right? I'm going to spend inspiration to know one of the guards, one of the King's Guard, right? I'm going to spend inspiration to contact someone in the black market. I'm going to spend inspiration to happen to find another weapon, right? Or I'm going to spend inspiration to find the right chemicals to set this thing on fire. There are many of yeah, Rickard says so more like a fate point. Exactly, absolutely, like a fate point, a Benny, a hero point, karma, moxie. Man, there's a bunch of names that people call them. But yeah, why not allow someone to spend, or at your table, spend inspiration like a fate point? Hey, my character's going along. I'm my third level fighter. Hey, can I spend inspiration to have my direwolf show up? Because I'm from the Stark bloodline or something. You're like, dude, that's cool. Yeah, having your it's been 15 years since you last saw that direwolf that went off into the wild. Yeah, why not have the direwolf show up in their pack or something? Dead Man even says, or you could use smart animals from Eclipse Phase. Man, we got to get back into Future Friday. You know what? We'll probably do that next week. Yeah, let's go back into that next week. Anyway, yeah, you could use smart animals and things. I mean, why not have that be a thing? Now, mind you, you could even have this be a thing where it's not specifically one animal, but an animal in general. So, for example, my rogue, I might use my fate point or my inspiration or whatnot, or even my background my background special trait to have a connection in the city of thieves, right? You, hey, well, once per game I can do this, or hey, I earned inspiration. I want to spend it to find to talk to the leader of the Assassin's Guild. Cool. But maybe the other player who's playing, I don't know, a cleric, it's like, my character grew up in the jungles of this world. Could I spend inspiration to have one of the jungle animals come out because my character is kind of like Tarzan like or tribal or something? Why not? Why? I mean, is it a little bit of a Deus Ex Machina? Sure, but it's one that we know is going to come up because we've decided that this is a real thing. When Tarzan is getting his ass kicked and the giant silverback ape jumps out of nowhere and saves his life, there's a reason for it because we know that that's the story element of that character befriended all of those animals, right? So maybe the cleric, is in the jungle and the giant silverback comes out and scares away I don't know, the velociraptors that were coming after him. And then maybe later on, in that same adventure, they're in the jungle and he's like, I'm going to spend inspiration to have a python come out of the trees and, or something like that. Yeah, I'd let that happen. Now, again, could it be stepping on the toes of, say, the druid in the group that wants to summon animals? Yeah, but again, is inspiration as readily available as spell slots or something? No, so I'll be like, nah, you're not really stepping on your toes. And of course, if there's no druid in the party, it doesn't really matter at your table, right? So animals can be used very much as a storytelling element as well, right? An animal could be something that just comes along to push the story further. For example, the party's camping out, on the plains or the savannah or something, and Deadman says Tarzan's ape friend is Turk. I didn't know that. Oh, they do mention that in, is it a Disney animated one and he calls him Turk? Is that where he says it out loud? I don't know if in the actual mythology of Tarzan that his name was Turk, but I'm not disputing you. I'm saying I never knew that, right? But yeah, I mean, who's to say that, hey, my player character's background was, you made it up, right? Or I'm modifying a hermit, or I'm modifying a folk hero, and my character grew up in the wilds and has just come into civilization. But this is my character type, so my NPCs in my character's background are actually animals. I'd go for that. Why not? It makes something cool and interesting. Ricker says, I think the DM needs to thread carefully. It's easy to destroy the fantasy and as such destroy the buy-in and immersion. I think that concept applies to damn near everything, right? I think that applies to everything in terms of like, how much do you insert the heavy hand into having these things happen? Now again, if the player is choosing to have this happen, I think you're going to get much more buy-in, right? If someone really wants to play a cleric or a fighter or a barbarian that doesn't have access to these things, and this is the only way they can get their grubby hands on some animals for their character type, because they're like, I don't want to go, let's say multi-classing, because multi-classing is an optional rule. Multi-classing is an optional rule. It may not appeal to everyone at their table. Maybe a feat or a class option or even spending inspiration might be a way for a player to insert those things. And as such, it's like, well, if the player decides it kind of means that they're immersed into it. As a game master, yeah, you got to tread really lightly. Otherwise, it's more, you're going to get your players eye rolling like, oh, here's the game master rolling their heavy hand. Here's another animal coming in. Now, again, if you've established something like the Starks, like let's say in your world, you have family bloodlines where their emblems and the way they act are related to specific types of animals, the bear, the stag, the scorpion, the cobra in your world, and they kind of, I don't want to say that there's a direct bloodline. Maybe I'm saying this wrong. But maybe there is some sort of connection to it. I could see you as the dungeon master and game master saying, hey, pick one of these 18 family lines that your character's from. And oh, by the way, I'm going to allow you to pull on those threads. If you want to play a Stark and you want to have a direwolf in your background, sure. If you want to play one of the people from Dorne and you want to have not either a scorpion or a sand snakes. You want to have a cobra or rattlesnake or something in your background. You might go, yeah, sure, that's what they are. Instead of races, you may have bloodlines in your world. So all the races could just be humans with a relationship to those animals or something. Rickard says druids and rangers are built around their connection with nature, so giving others the option makes a druid and ranger can feel redundant. That would only be that way if there are rangers and druids in your game. It's a possibility that no one wants to play either one of those. So if someone is like, hey, I want my rogue to be related to nature, like I think there's a rogue subclass for the scout or something, right? If no one's playing a ranger or druid, or maybe people don't even like those character types, then at your table, the idea is moot, right? Me outside of your table, I can go, yeah, it seems redundant. In your table, you're just like, yeah, but no one wants to play or even use them, right? So yes. Yeah, Rickard says, but if there are druids and rangers in a group, it's a dangerous path, of course. And like many things, although it kind of, that's another discussion. It's in my head. I'm going to go to it down another thing. Dead Man says ERB called the ape Nakima. Disney changed it to Turk. Oh, really? I did not know that. I did not know that. Wow. They probably changed it from Nakima to Turk because they dumbed it down, as if people wouldn't be able to understand or pronounce Nakima. But whatever. Side note. Yeah, I'm getting a little squirrely here. We already have character subtypes that are infringing on other people's abilities. For example, there are subclasses that already have magic. There's a subclass for every class that has magic that doesn't normally have magic, which steps kind of on the toes of those who are arcane casters. So we're already down that path. It's already too late for that. And most people complain that like one class is limited. Like people complain sorcerers don't have enough magic. It's like you've nerfed sorcerers because they don't have as much magic as the wizard. And I'm thinking, well, if you wanted to have that much magic, play a wizard, right? It's the thing. And I do understand, like, if you're saying like, well, if you're going to play a fighter that's got all these animals, why don't you just play a ranger? Sure. Yeah, Rickard says flavor and abilities are two different but related things. Yeah, and again, flavor is free. You have far more difficulty changing abilities because not only are you afraid of imbalancing things as the mechanics go in the game, you also don't want to do the same thing with your own players, right, at your own table, despite whatever the mechanics say. So that changing abilities can be a little bit problematic. Flavor, on the other hand, is absolutely free. You can change flavor for anything. Rickard says a paladin, while a divine caster source, does not have the flavor of a cleric. Some would argue with that, especially clerics that are able to wield swords. Some would say that a cleric is just more of a more divine paladin of sorts. So again, paladins have oaths. Clerics tend to not have anything, even though they're called clerics. They don't. There's nothing religious about them really. Rickard says, or even better, a warlock gives a different flavor than a sorcerer, despite both being charisma-based caster, because they're using different rules and such for how they use it. And of course, we are adding to those characters and those classes a flavor. We're assuming a flavor to them that may or may not be representative of what they do. So, for example, we automatically flavor shit. Your connection is all right. Sorry, the connection went unstable for a moment there, so I apologize if the sound and or picture went out. Yeah, yeah. Just like Rickard says, like, okay, there we go. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Yeah, just talking about warlock patrons and the patron versus their innate ability and stuff and all that kind of thing. So my point is that when it comes to animals, when it comes to storytelling, when it comes to the idea of adding in animals into the world, I think we're doing a disservice because while there are character classes where that's what they do, their character class is I'm part of nature. I have animals. Yes, but if someone wants that, and again, like anything, session zero, like anything, open your damn mouth and talk to it with other people at the table. If it's not stepping on someone's toes, then it's fine, right? At your table, you can do whatever the hell you want. I just think that adding them into the table adds another dynamic that we're missing. Just like yeah, just like adding in the environment, man. Like we Deadman says we've hit the hour mark. You sure have. Adding in animals, I think, is just like adding in people. They can be a problem because it's a muscle we don't flex too much. But I think it deserves a second look. I think it deserves the ability to have us included. And by the way, animals die all the time. So if you put them in your game and you have players who are just like, hey, we're 3 PCs, but we have 18 animals surrounding us. Yeah, you could pretty easily just like, well, yeah, but no. One of them gotten pregnant, another one's diseased, a third one broke their leg, and see ya. So we're going to get to that. We're going to end it here pretty soon. Rigger says, I will add about adding animals, even with the druid or ranger in the party, build them into it. So your warrior wants an animal to come to aid them, have a pet, make that pet or animal interact with the druid or ranger, right? Yeah, and give them a personality. Every animals have personalities of some sort or another. Give them their own motivations and whatnot. Let them. Animals tend to investigate things on their own. Animals tend to sleep when they want to. Animals tend to, the hero that wants to go around the corner and the animal starts pulling on their arm to prevent them from doing it. Or the PC that's injured and the animal that wants to drag them to safety. Or the animal that's that constantly wants to have their head rubbed or something, or gets a tummy rub, or loves your baked stew in the woods or whatnot. I mean, like, add in these little flavors and these little things. Who knows that maybe the player doesn't know when their direwolf went off into the wild that direwolf gave birth to puppies, and the direwolf wants the PC to come to the puppies and watch over them. Those kind of things. I even had a storyline where blink dogs would go to the lawful and good player characters, and the blink dogs would hide their pups amongst regular dogs so that they would be hidden from displacer beasts, which loves to kill them. So, but Rickard says that way you give the druid or ranger an opportunity to use their connection to nature a bit and shine in their own way. Of course, absolutely. If that's their thing, if a player character picks a druid or a ranger, let them run around in the wilds. Let them reward them for their behavior. If the ranger or druid wants to go out of their way to save the direwolf pups and ensure that they have another home, or save the mother of the pups, reward that character. And it doesn't necessarily mean giving them a direwolf, but it could be rewarding them in any number of ways. Maybe the direwolf mom eventually comes to the rescue of that character, and then maybe one of the pups grows old enough and starts following one of the characters around, and that becomes a thing. That'd be kind of cool. So anyway, we've long past the hour mark. Guys, thank you very much. I thought we'd talk about, I mean, hell, every single subject we talk about, we could probably go on for another 2 hours to flesh out all the little tangents we go down. But thank you very much for joining me. I believe tomorrow is Ned Stark, and then next week, because of course we're still going to Game of Thrones Endgame. I get to see Endgame this weekend. That's going to be a big thing as well. So I thought we'd take a break and go back to our usual. So I know Deadman really loves Eclipse Phase, me too. So I want to go back to Future Fridays and do some other things. So yeah, we'll go back to our usual, like Monster Mondays, Tips and Tricks Tuesdays, World Building Wednesday, that kind of thing. Might be thinking about pulling back on one or two of those days and doing kind of like either like a private. Speaking of Direwolves dying, yeah, yeah, both in the show and myself right now. But anyway, yeah, so we'll do. We always have something to talk about all the time. So we'll do our thing. I kind of want to do something a little more personal, like maybe do like a specific day for the Discord and just talk with you guys openly without any specific I always have a topic and do something without a specific topic. Maybe I might do like a live like Facebook thing or something. I don't know. I'll come up with something. Maybe you guys hit me with a couple of those things. I'll pop into the Discord when I can, if you guys have some ideas amongst yourselves. So that kind of thing. So anyway, guys, again, let's not measure our loves. Yeah, Rickard says that would be awesome. Yeah, something not this, but live, where we can just maybe I'll pop into Discord and be live with audio or something, and other people can pop in. Maybe we could have a talk or something. I don't know. I'm thinking of something that's a little more private and for you guys. So anyway, let's not measure our hates. Let's not measure our loves by the things we hate. Right. Yeah, Deadman says could do a chat on the Discord as well. Yeah, Discord has audio, video, and chat, so could do something like that. So yeah, I'm not just considering it. I'm going to do it. I'm just thinking of when to do it, how to do it, so that it's very consistent. Like me coming here at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, while it's not appropriate for everyone, is a consistency, and I would rather be consistent. So anyway, guys, everyone have a great one. I will see thee tomorrow. See ya. Bye.